Hi everyone, this is Pat Lee, founder of Reu. I am going to give you a little bit of a behind the scenes of our upcoming workshop on understanding stories and narratives of intergenerational trauma. So here goes. When we start to think about this bigger topic of trauma and intergenerational trauma, it can be a really scary topic. And so one of the things that we're trying to unpack with this particular workshop is an understanding of how intergenerational trauma actually influences our communicative and peace building patterns, right? How it influences our conflicts, how it influences the way that we present ourselves in everyday life, and how it influences the way that we perceive others, the kinds of biases that we form, and how that in turn feeds our conflict dynamic. Now, it's really difficult to have any kind of conversation on trauma and resilience without this understanding, or I guess maybe an expectation that at some point we're going to be talking about the big T's and the little T's of trauma. And I just want to make it clear that this workshop is not about trying to treat, diagnose, or in any way unpack personal experiences of trauma. I mean, this certainly is not a mental health treatment course. It is not a diagnosis or crisis intervention course. What this is an opportunity for parents, vulnerable sector support workers, teachers, coaches to really deepen their understanding of the way that we communicate and interact with clients and with individuals who are in their various stages of responding and reacting to intergenerational trauma. And so the goal is to provide some skills and some tools that really do help with that communicative process, because the communicative process is really important to transforming the relationship, and transforming the relationship means that we're breaking those cycles of intergenerational trauma, but we're also creating new cycles of intergenerational resilience. In these kinds of workshops, I'm just going to pull up these books because I'm really excited to share. I love my books. I am excited to share some of the material that I do reference in a workshop like this. So some people might be familiar with this one, Dr. Gabor Mate's When the Body Says No. It's a really interesting thing, interesting topic, or some interesting material there to wrap our heads around. There's also this one by Bessel van der Kolk, called The Body Keeps the Score. It's hard for me to read the thing backwards. The Body Keeps the Score. So that's also a really good one for us to consider. But then we go a little bit deeper into talking about the interpersonal and the interrelational aspects of dealing with different aspects of trauma. So from the peace building side, we really do want to take account of some of these things that are happening when we start to think about the way that people come into those experiences of trauma and why that resilience is important. So this is a really interesting one, Understanding Violence, that I do refer to from time to time. And this is by Elizabeth Kendall Englander. And there is this one of my favorites, by Judith Herman, called Trauma and Recovery. And then, because when we're dealing with these, we're not just talking about them in abstract, and it's definitely not an information dump. And we're certainly not trying to pull people into the trauma Olympics. That's the word I use to describe people. The propensity that we sometimes have when we enter into a conversation about struggle and stress, we try to outdo each other with my struggle, my stress, my trauma is worse than your struggle, your stress, your trauma. So I call that the Trauma Olympics. So we're definitely not trying to do that. What we're trying to do with this course is really try to understand the way that people show up as a result of their experiences of intergenerational trauma that they are still living through. And how do we understand those narratives? How do we perceive them? And how do we respond to them in a way that is constructive, in a way that helps that person build and grow their resilience story, and in a way that allows us to be able to maintain our own personal safety and cultivate our own resilience stories. And so a couple of other books that I really do like to draw material from and to reference is, of course, my foundational element, my Bible, Researching Lived Experience by Max van Manen, which is really the epitome of understanding the nature of lived experiences and the way that we engage in these narratives about our experiences, and the fact that there is an action sensitive approach that can be taken out of the unpacking of those lived experiences. And then another favorite of mine is braces. Is called "It Didn't Start With You" by Mark Wolin. Love this book. I love the way that stories help to shape, and those lived experience telling help to shape the way that the stories of overcoming and resilience are told. And then here's another favorite, What Happened to You by Bruce D. Perry, along with Oprah Winfrey. No, don't get freaked out by that. It's it's a really, really good book. And the whole idea here is, being able to shift those conversations to what's wrong with you to what happened to you, and put that into perspective in our everyday conversations. Like, how valuable is that going to be for a parent, for a teacher, for a support worker, for someone who is interacting with co-workers on a daily basis that show up in a different way each and every time? How does that understanding of the way that things that are happening in the news, conflicts in what seem to be in far off distant lands, how does that affect that person that is showing up in front of you right now? And how do you shape conversations in a way that is constructive and leaning more towards that preservation and transformation of a relationship, as opposed to making things worse? So that's a little bit of a synopsis, if you will, of the course that'll be coming up. Really happy to welcome you into it. Check out our website, www.reumindfulness.com, for more details about the workshop and our start dates. Talk soon.